Episode 19, Catacomb Entrance. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Black Magic Craft. Today I'm going to show you how I built this cool looking catacomb entrance. It is a relatively easy and quick little styrofoam project to build, but it looks really cool on your game table. I'm going to be using it in my D&D games, but it would work well in Frostgrave, in Wargaming, in any other kind of RPG, as it is a pretty generic looking piece. So let's take a look at how I built it, and then you can make your own. So this is my catacomb entrance. Now, when I made this, it was for an encounter that my players, as of the time of recording this video, will be doing in a few days. It'll start out in the cemetery using the chapel from the previous episode, but I wanted an entrance to the actual dungeon, a way for them to get below ground and into the catacombs. And I didn't want that entrance to be within the chapel, I wanted it to be within the cemetery itself, so I needed a catacomb entrance. And this created a bit of a problem in terms of what to build, because I wanted something that was freestanding in the cemetery with doors that would lead to a lower level. My first thought was to do something that was embedded in a hill, kind of like a hobbit house, that was a doorway in stone leading below. And I think that would have looked cool, but I think that it would have been one, bigger than I wanted once you have a hill that would conceal the door, and then would only be able to be used in the kind of grassy terrain to match whatever I did the hill with. I wanted something that I could drop into other places. With this, for example, you know, it's meant to go outside just in the landscape and be an entrance. But if I really wanted to, I could put this indoors in a dungeon, you know, leading down to a lower level. You know, it's a freestanding object. So I was thinking, how do I accomplish this? I didn't really want to build a full building. Looking into catacomb entrance photos online, I saw a lot of them were basically little buildings that you go into and then, you know, you descend, but I didn't want to have a full other building. So I kind of had the thought of doing it similar to a lot of modern day utility entrances, where there's just a little building with a sloped roof to accommodate going down into a stairwell. And I'm pretty happy with that compromise. I think it works well. It keeps the piece reasonably small. It kept it simple to build, and I think it looks pretty cool, and it's kind of obvious as to what it is. If you put this, you know, on a grass board in a cemetery, you can tell that obviously this is leading to a stairwell to a lower surface. So in order to achieve this, I used very similar methods to previous builds, where there's a substructure and it's faced with different layers of brick. So this one, I started by making this kind of triangle wedge shape, and I achieved this by layering 2 layers of 1.5" insulation foam, gluing them together, letting it dry, and then cutting out this wedge shape. Once I had that and I was happy with the shape, I went ahead and I made a door, which is just, you know, a thin layer of the insulation foam with the wood planks, you know, drawn in with a pen. The wood grain is done with the wire brush. I then took some little strips of wood for these kind of braces here, glued those on, used a pin to indent little holes to imply some kind of nails. Once I had the door on there, I went and did these bricks around it that kind of frame the doorway, the archway. That's when this thing kind of started to take shape, and I knew that I was on the right track. So at that point, I went and I made a whole bunch of individual bricks to glue to the sides. These are, I think they're 1 centimeter by 2 centimeters about. I can't remember. I might have just free-handed picked a size, kind of what eyeball looked good. We'll just say 1 by 2 centimeters. But these ones I sliced very thin so that I could, when facing it, wrap them around this curve, and just glued them all on with Aleene's, whatever it's called, tacky glue, same as I always do. Again, I love this technique. I think it adds so much depth to a piece. From now on, I think I'm building basically everything like that. Once I had those sides on, I wanted this to kind of match aesthetically the cathedral or chapel from the previous video. So I did these side buttresses just to kind of decorate it. And I did them the exact same as I did on the chapel, which is just cutting basically a square piece of insulation foam and then etching in the bricks with a pencil or pen. Glued those to the sides. And then I needed something to do for the quote-unquote roof of this, and I just cut up some more bricks, but these ones I made thicker so that they're more like to scale actual size that they should be on the piece. And starting from the bottom, and actually, did I start from the bottom? I can't remember. No, I think I started from the top and worked my way down so that whatever I ended up here at the bottom could just be sliced afterwards. I used a mix of different colors of bricks, one because I was just using scrap material, and also I was hoping that the different colors of styrofoam would kind of bleed through in my paint job to give it some variance. But when I got to painting, I ended up coating this pretty heavily in the base coat, and the color of the styrofoam didn't end up showing through, so it was kind of irrelevant. When I did the side bricks, I just let them all overhang, like run wild, and then once it was dry before doing this roof, I just followed the edge of the roof and sliced them off. And it was kind of the same thing with the roof bricks. Line up on one edge, and I just kind of ran them wild as I was finishing them, and then once it was dried, I kind of went around and cut the edges off. I find that when possible is easier to do than cutting the little bricks to length first. If you can just run them wild and then cut them off afterwards, it'll make things a lot easier. And it was the same with the bottom. When I got to this bottom edge, you can see that there is a bevel on this one. These, I just ran them long, and then once the glue is nice and tacked up and dry, I could just take my knife and cut it flush, which gave me the right angle on these so that it would sit nice and flat on the ground. Once I had those done, I was happy with the way it looked, but I thought it needed some kind of embellishment, so I added this decoration to the front of it. This is just a piece of the Ready board, the dollar store foam core that I cut to shape. I took a skull bead that was from a Halloween bracelet 2 years ago. I put that in place. The nice thing is that it already came with a hole drilled right through it because it's a bead. And then I used some toothpicks that went through the through the Ready board into the skull and then down into the piece. So it was really, really strong. It was a little tricky to get these toothpicks going straight down through this thin piece of foam core without breaking it, but I just took my time, did it slowly, and managed to not explode it. There's a little bit of etching on here for some more decoration, but that was basically it. Once that was all done, I tried an experiment for foam coating. You know, normally I do the Mod Podge, but I've heard a few people taking drywall joint compound and really watering it down, mixing it with some glue, and then coating a whole piece in that. And I tried that out, and it did make the piece fairly hard. It also made the piece nice and flat, which would accept paint really well because the drywall compound is very flat and porous. But I found that it did remove a lot more detail than I would have liked. There was a lot of fine detail in this. I don't know, that was kind of obscured by that. Some of it's still showing through with these cracks. Like some of these bricks I individually sliced when I was putting them on to show cracking, and it hasn't come through as strongly as I think it would have with the Mod Podge. Whatever, it was an experiment. I think it's a great technique if you're doing stuff like hills or whatever, but if fine detail work, I'll probably stick to just the layer of Mod Podge, which I then decided to put on top as well, just to see how strong something would be with both the joint compound and the Mod Podge. And I gotta say, it's pretty hard. Most of the stuff I make is to hold up to home D&D games with my group of friends who, you know, respect the stuff that's on the table, and I don't transport it, so I don't worry too much. But for people that are doing stuff at like their local game store or doing more wargaming where things can get abused, I would say this would absolutely hold up to any of that kind of abuse. So it is a good system to make styrofoam really hard and protected. After the Mod Podge, went to paint, and I think I coated the whole thing in kind of a tan, with the exception of the doors. And I did all the coloring with washes this time. I didn't do too much actual paint work. I did a black wash, did some lighter dry brushing, and then a whole bunch of washes after that. I had this idea that it'd be nice to get the washes onto the piece without a brush so that you don't get any brush lines or splotches. I kind of wanted to let the liquid just fall on it and let gravity do its job. And an airbrush is like obviously the best way to do that, but I don't have an airbrush, and while it's something I will be getting at some point, I wasn't about to get it right away. So I just used these cheap, like 3 for $1 spray squirt bottles from the dollar store, put my wash in there, squirted it on. I mean, it ain't pretty, but it gets everything covered and coated without any brush marks. It actually gives some nice splatter effects if you want that, which I did do near the end. I did some green washes. It's probably hard to see, but there is like green undertones in here because I wanted it to look very, like it's got a lot of, like, what do you call it, like moss? Not moss, but just mold, moss, whatever. It's been outside for a long time, sitting in water. But anyway, the spray bottle allowed me to put that on in a nice kind of natural way and get it kind of splotchy looking, and I really like that. For the skull and these spikes, I wanted them to look like a patinaed copper. So I painted them out in like a brass paint first. And then for patina, I just make my own mixed color, which is it's a green and an aqua that I kind of mix together till I get the right color, and I just dab that on to any kind of copper stuff. I also did this statue out of a Disney toy from the dollar store in a similar paint style. You can kind of see the result a little bit better on this. Perhaps maybe I'll do a video on this statue specifically because it was really easy and it turned out pretty darn good. But anyway, that's the way that I painted this skull. There's a lot more washes put on this, so it kind of removed some of that. But that is my Catacomb entrance. All right, guys, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, hit that like button and drop me a comment below. And if you built something inspired by one of my videos, go over to the Black Magic Craft Facebook page and post a picture. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that button. And last, if you really want to help this channel grow, the best way you can do that is by supporting Black Magic Craft on Patreon. All the funding goes directly towards new video equipment and software so that I can bring you better content and give it to you more often. I'll see you again next time. Peace.